hindquarters. They're actually not related to the zebra. The closest known living relative is actually the giraffe. They have a couple of short, stubby antlers on the top of their heads called ossicones. They also have a long, purplish-black prehensile tongue, which can grow to be about 16 to 18 inches long, just about as long as the average human's forearm. The okapis' tongues are long enough that if they wanted to, they could actually lick their own eyeballs.
What? Wait, what?
Yeah, I know, pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
No, that's disgusting.
Oh, come on, it's not that gross. If your tongue was that long, you'd want to try it too. I know I would.
What did
On the
they
right-hand
eat?
side here, up at the top of the hill, this light brown orange animal, that's called a bongo. And up ahead of us, there's a black rhino there up against that rock wall, as well as another one on the far left.
I see its tail. Wow, look at that hippo.
Those are black rhinos. They're smaller than their cousin, the white rhino. They have a prehensile upper lip. Prehensile means they can grab. They use that upper lip in order to grab the leaves off of bushes and tree branches in order to eat. Now those bongos that we saw are also known as the ghosts of the forest, and that's because of how rarely they're seen, so it's nice to see those guys. Both male and female bongos will grow horns, but the way you can tell the difference between the two is the female bongos are more of an orange color, whereas the males are more of a darker brown. Those light sandy brown animals without the horns, those are called greater kudu. Greater kudu are some of the tallest of the antelope species. They're going to be about 55 to 58 inches tall just at the shoulder. Only male greater kudu grow horns though, so those ones are female. Those black rhinos that we saw are an increasingly rare sight to see. Unfortunately, they're an endangered species. They're poached for their horns. Some cultures believe them to have medicinal properties, but scientifically we have not been able to find any. Their horns are actually made up of the same material that's in our hair and fingernails called keratin. As a sort of anti-poaching measure, we developed a process where we can dye a rhino's horn a bright pink color. It dissuades poachers from stealing their horns, which will help save their lives. Now we're making our way out towards the Sathi River. Out on this side of the river is usually where we'll find some more aquatic animals. What we're going to want to look for is any sort of dark shadows in the water, as well as maybe some bubbles popping up here and there. That's a pretty good sign of some wildlife nearby. Nothing quite yet, but we'll definitely keep our eyes open here. There's a couple of ripples in the water there. It looks like there's a hippo. Just off to the right-hand side, up by the front of that island, you might see a little bit of a shadow in the water.
I don't see it.
That was a Nile hippopotamus. They spend about 16 to 18 hours of their day in the water. Usually they come up out of the water onto the riverbanks at night, or when it's colder out, such as in the early morning or the late afternoon, in order to graze at the riverbanks. There's another one in the water here. You can just barely see that shadow. Looks like they're coming up for a breath, though, maybe. Hippos can spend 8 minutes under the water before they need to come up for a breath, so it's a little bit of a rare sight to see them up at the top of the whip.
Looks like a swan.
There's another one there, too. A group of hippos like this one is also called the bloat. A bloat of hippos. Also to the left-hand side here, these light gray, almost white animals with the longer yellow beaks. Those are called pink-backed pelicans. Their backs may not be very pink right now, but they get their name from their mating season when their backs will flush with a bright pink color. They're very colonial birds. They typically nest in pairs of anywhere between 20 to over 500 of them in one group. A group of them is called a pod. A pod of pink-backed pelicans. Are you guys writing this down? There will be a test.
Oh, come on.
I'm just kidding. Or am I? Are you willing to take that risk?
No.
To the left-hand side here, there's a group of crocodiles. These are Nile crocodiles.
I don't see it.
Now, crocodiles are exothermic animals, meaning that they get their heat from outside sources. They don't make it themselves. Another term you might be a little more familiar with for that is cold-blooded. A group of crocodiles is also called a basque of crocodiles. And they can grow to be over 16 feet in length, weighing in at over 500 pounds. But don't let their large size fool you, they're some of the best parents in the entire animal kingdom. When they first lay their eggs, they'll hold them on the inside of their mouths in order to incubate them. And when it gets closer to time for those eggs to hatch, the crocodiles will roll them around on the inside of their mouths. It sort of pre-cracks the eggshells and makes it easier for their babies to hatch as soon as they're ready to come out. We're going to make our way in towards the largest section of the reserve, called the savanna. Out on the savanna, there's a lot less tree coverage, so instead of relying on camouflage, animals usually rely on their safety in numbers as well as their speed in order to outmaneuver predators. To the right-hand side here is one of the most important trees along the savanna. It's called the baobab tree.
Looks like a haunted
The baobab
tree.
tree also has a couple of different nicknames as well.
Looks like a haunted tree.
About 9 months out of the year, all the branches on that tree will be completely leafless, making it look like its roots are up above the ground, giving it the nickname of the upside-down tree. During the dry season, the baobab tree will store gallons and gallons of water on the inside of its trunk. Animals with tusks and horns can come up and puncture holes in the bark and then drink the water that's on the inside, kind of like a really big juice box. Gives that tree the second nickname of the Tree of Life. We're in some pretty good luck out here on the savannah already. As we come down the hill over to the right-hand side here, this is a group of springbok. The springbok are some of my personal favorite animals out here on the reserve.
The tail.
They can jump about 6 feet vertically as well as 13 feet horizontally. When they're scared, they do behavior called pronking. They'll arch their backs in sort of an upside-down U shape and then bounce around all over the savannah. When they do that, they can actually get speeds of around 50 miles per hour.
Poop.
There's a couple of Ankole cattle off there in the distance as well. We'll talk about those guys when we get a little bit closer to them.
Those horns are sharp. Yeah. What's that one called?
To the left-hand side, way back in the back there, up against that rock wall, there's a couple of spotted hyena laying down. If you can't see them, they're really, really hard to see, so I don't blame you.
Behind the tree.
They're way, way back there, hanging out just between that ridge. You might be able to see them in between that tall grass there.
I can't see nothing.
The spotted hyena are some of the only packs of hyenas that'll group together instead of being a solitary animal. And they're actually not even related to dogs. They're not part of the canine family of animals at all. They're part of their own family called the Hyenidae family. Here's a great look at those Ankole cattle off to the left-hand side. As a reminder, folks, we do need our masks over our nose and mouth for the entire duration of the safari.
Sorry.
There's one over there.
Big horns.
Those horns are big.
The Ankole cattle are some of the only domesticated species out here on the reserve. They're also nicknamed the Watusi cattle after the tribe that they first domesticated them. They're known for those huge horns that they have on the top of their heads, but despite their large size, they're very lightweight. They're made up of a sort of honeycomb-like structure, and they have blood vessels that reach all the way into the tippy top of those horns. They work sort of like a natural radiator, helping cool them off on hot summer days like today.
I see a giraffe. Like 2 giraffes.
Yeah, you guys see a couple of giraffes over there to the left-hand side at the top of the hill.
Looks like
Those are Maasai giraffes. We can tell because of their spot patterns.
Looks like
The darker brown spots are a lot more rigid and they have a lot sharper corners. And the light yellow, almost sandy brown lines in between those darker brown spots are a lot thicker. That's all compared to their cousin, the reticulated giraffe. If you have a chance while you're here at Walt Disney World, head over to Disney's Animal Kingdom Lodge. They have a couple of reticulated giraffes out in their savannah there.
the
You'll
tail.
notice the differences I'm talking
Look at
about.
that. It's like scratching.
The giraffes are some of the tallest animals in the entire animal kingdom. When they're first born, baby giraffe are right around 6 feet tall. They're known for their tall height, their long necks, and their long purplish-black prehensile tongues. With those 3 powers combined, they like to eat as many leaves off the tree branches as they can possibly get their mouths on.
There's another poop.
Giraffes spend about 16 hours of their day eating. They only need to sleep about 30 minutes every single day. When they do, they'll actually break it up into a couple of minute-long naps throughout the day, rather than sleeping a full 30 minutes in one go. Over to the right-hand side here, there's a group of wildebeest.
Wildebeest.
Wildebeest are some of the largest herding animals in the world. They're herded together in groups of over 1.5 million of them. It's the second largest groups of animals, next only to humans, who herd together in larger groups.
Wildebeest.
There's another giraffe coming up here on the left-hand side.
Looks like a zebra.
We're gonna drive a little bit slowly, see if they're gonna keep going on that side, or if maybe they'll want to cross the street. They're pretty close to the truck. Just make sure you keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs on the inside, please.
my god. Oh, look at that giraffe.
A group of giraffe, like the ones that we're seeing over here on the left-hand side, is also called a tower of giraffe. You might see that one closest to the truck with that palm tree, using that long purplish-black prehensile tongue to eat all those leaves off the palm trees. Their tongues are that purplish-black color because when you spend 16 hours every day eating, it can be really uncomfortable to do that with a sunburnt tongue. Now, despite their long necks, giraffes also have the same amount of vertebrae as you and me. Vertebrae are the bones that are in our neck, and
Let's
both
go.
you, me, and those giraffes each have 7. Their vertebrae are just way bigger than ours are.
Yep. That's what he said.
We're going to take a quick detour off the savannah, though, and head out into elephant country, see if we can spot anything nearby, and we're in some pretty good luck. Over to the right-hand side here, in between that tall grass and those palm trees, there's an African elephant.
Oh, I see one.
And we can tell it's an African elephant for a couple of reasons. Number 1, we are in Africa.
Wow.
And number 2, we can tell because of their ears. The African elephant's ears are much larger than their cousin, the Asian elephant. They're also shaped similarly to the continent of Africa. You might notice how that elephant's back is a different color than the rest of them. Elephants will actually take dirt and sand on the ground, pick it up with their trunks, and fling it onto their backs. It works sort of like a natural sunscreen, helping make sure they don't get sunburned during the day.
Okay, they can
You can also
come.
tell if that's a male African elephant because he was by himself. When elephants reach adulthood, they'll split into two separate herds: a family herd made up of the adult female elephants and the children, and a bachelor herd made up of just the adult males. Now, unfortunately, the African elephant is an endangered species. They're poached for their tusks, which are made up of material called ivory, which sells for a pretty high price on the black market. It is an illegal act to poach an elephant for their tusks.
They can actually come.
Farmers in Africa were also having a hard time keeping elephants away from their crops. They'd come up and steal them sort of like a quick snack. And the farmers were starting to use some less than kind means to try and keep those elephants away. So here at Animal Kingdom, we decided to try and find a better way. We spent a lot of time researching elephant vocalizations, and during our studies we learned that elephants are afraid of bees and will warn each other when there are bees nearby. Using that information, we developed a type of fence which stores a beehive on the inside of the fence itself. Farmers can place these fences around their crops. The elephants will stay away because of the bees and warn their friends. And the farmers get the added benefit of being able to make a profit off the honey that the bees make.
There's a lion.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but that sounds like a pretty sweet deal to me.
Yep.
We're driving through some red clay pits here. It's a good sign we might find more elephants nearby. To the right-hand side, you can see a bunch of tusk marks dug into that red clay. Elephants will come up and scrape their tusks against that clay and break off small pieces and actually eat those chunks of clay. They're super high in minerals like iron, which are great for their diet. It's a lot like nature's multivitamin for them. We'll keep our eyes out and see if we can find any more elephants nearby.
I don't see one.
Cuando vas por el agua, se los mira. Panda también.
Oh, I see
There's
one.
another elephant off to the left-hand side there. We'll head on down to this watering hole here and see if we can find any more as well. Elephants like to spend their time by watering holes like this one. Despite common misconception, they don't actually drink directly through their trunks. Instead, they use them sort of like a really big straw. They can suck up about 5 gallons of water into their trunks at one time, and they'll move them over to their mouths and drink the water through there.
On the water.
Coming up here on the left-hand side is a group of greater flamingos. Greater flamingos are a lighter pink color than their cousin the lesser flamingo. They get that pink coloring from their diet. They're not born with it. They're born a more light gray color. Usually takes about 1 to 2 years for flamingos to turn fully pink. They eat brine shrimp, which are super high in a mineral called beta-carotene, and that's what gives them that pink coloring. Flamingos are filter feeders. When they go to eat those shrimp, they'll stick their heads entirely underneath the water and upside down. Then they'll open and close their beaks repeatedly. That filters in the shrimp to make sure that all the sand and dirt that the shrimp live in doesn't get into their mouths, so they don't have to eat that. A group of flamingos is also called a flamboyance. A flamboyance of flamingos. Off to the left-hand side here, there's a pretty big mud wallow in the ground. That's a good sign we might find some rhinos nearby. Rhinos like to roll around in that mud and coat their sensitive skin with it. It works sort of like a natural sunscreen as well as bug repellent in order to help keep them safe. We'll keep our eyes out and see if we can find any nearby. They sometimes like to hang out in these trees over to the right-hand side, and they do make a pretty convincing rock. I don't see any right over there for now, though.
Oh, I don't see it.
We're going to want to keep our eyes peeled up ahead of us and to the left-hand side, though, especially against the ridge, hanging out in the shade and by those trees. We've been known to spot some cheetahs over there. Their spot pattern works as a really, really good camouflage for them. It makes it a little bit hard to see them, but I think it's way back there in the back
I see it
left,
right there.
walking around.
It moves.
Cheetahs are the fastest land animals in the world. They're able to go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just about 3 seconds. They can only keep that speed up for around 5 seconds, though, before they have to slow down. They're more sprinters than marathon runners. A cheetah's claws are non-retractable, which helps them keep a grip when they run. They also use their tails sort of like a rudder in order to help themselves turn. And they have a couple of black teardrop-like markings on their eyes and muzzles. It looks like a natural pair of sunglasses, making sure the glare stays out of their eyes.
There's another one.
Cheetahs are also some of the only big cats in the world known to purr.
When you pet.
Up ahead of us here, there's some Kopi rocks. Kopi rocks are usually where lions like to spend their time. Lions, however, are nocturnal animals. They'll spend about 16 to 20 hours of their day either resting or sleeping, only coming out at night in order to hunt. The female lions or lionesses will go out and hunt, while the male lions will stay back and protect the cubs. A group of lions is called a pride. The pride of lions.
I don't see a lion.
Looks like we found some rhinos, though. They're up ahead of us, hanging out underneath those trees over by the bushes. And those are white rhinos.
I see rhinos.
White rhinos are not actually any different in color than their cousin, the black rhino. They get their name from a mistranslation. Their name comes from the Afrikaans word of wijd, meaning wide. Afrikaans is an offshoot of the language Dutch, typically used in some southern regions of Africa. And the word wijd, or wide, is actually in reference to their mouths. They have a much wider, more rectangular shaped mouth than their cousin, the black rhino, which helps them graze at grass. Rhinos can run at speeds of around 30 miles per hour. When they run, they actually gallop, meaning there are times where all 4 of their feet will be off the ground at one point. Now, unfortunately, they have very terrible eyesight. They can only see about 10 feet in front of them. They have spectacular hearing. They can rotate each ear independently of one another, giving them a full 360-degree radius of hearing. To the left-hand side here, hang out underneath those trees, there's a warthog digging around.
Oh my god, the fourth?
The warthogs are the world's largest burrowing mammals. They dig those burrows with those razor-sharp tusks that they have, 2 on the top of their mouths and 2 on the bottom. When they go into those burrows, they'll actually back into them with their tusks facing outwards, that way they can defend themselves against predators. I heard some of you guys saying Hakuna Matata. That's the catchphrase of Pumbaa, the warthog from the Lion King. Pumbaa is actually a Swahili phrase, and it means foolish.
Looks like
Here's a great look at those white rhinos on the right-hand side. There's also a Bontabak, that light brown animal with the horns, and a couple of ostrich eggs on the ground there, too.
Oh, rhino egg.
There's a rhino egg. There's a rhino eggies. Rhino. Oh, there's another
A group
one.
of rhinos is also called a crash. A crash of rhinos. And that Bontabak we saw is one of the best success stories of conservation in the world. At one point in time, there are only about 17 of them left in the wild. A group of farmers noticed this, and they built a huge fence around those Bontabak. They made sure to keep them safe. And now today in the wild, there's a group of around 500 of them. They're definitely much better off than they were, but unfortunately, they are still an endangered species, and they do still need our help. We'll talk about all that in just a minute, though. We're making our way into the last section of the reserve here, called the Magadi Glen. Out here in the Glen, the wardens have made a little bit of an outpost. They also adopted some animals to take care of. We'll see if we can get a look at them as we come around the corner here. As you come around this turn, you can look around the camp here, hang out underneath the awning. You'll see a couple of Nigerian dwarf goats. The wardens adopted these goats for a few reasons. Number one, they're pretty cute. They like to run around and play around a lot of the day. Their milk is also incredibly nutritious. The wardens could drink that milk or sell it to the local village. They can also save that milk, make it into cheese, eat the cheese, sell the cheese, whatever they like to do. Having these domesticated animals on the reserve is great for conservation. It helps us rely a little less on wildlife in order to make a profit, which is always a good thing. Now, unfortunately, friends, we are going to be making our way off of the reserve and headed back towards the village of Harambe, which means our safari is going to be coming to an end. While you're still a bit of a captive audience, though, I'd like to talk a little bit more about conservation. It's incredibly important to all the animals that we saw in the reserve today, especially ones that are endangered, though, which unfortunately is more than you think. But not to worry, the easiest thing we can do to help them is to reduce, reuse, and recycle. Those animals out in the Little Ituri Forest are endangered due to loss of habitat through deforestation. So if we can reduce or cut down the amount of paper products that we use, reuse them a couple of extra times, and then recycle them afterwards, we'll be helping to save those animals' homes. Elephants are also an endangered species due to loss of habitat, but this time through mining. In all of our personal electronic devices, cell phones, laptops, tablets, cameras, there's a mineral called coltan. And coltan is found and mined in the same places that elephants like to live. Next time you think about upgrading your device, bring your old one with you to a local electronics store. They should actually have a place where you can recycle that device. And they'll take the materials like coltan out of it and use it to make a new one, rather than having to mine it for some more, which will help save those elephants' homes. Out in the Tokyo Olympics that are happening right now, due to the major impact of the Olympics, they decided to try and find a more sustainable way to hold them. All of the Olympic medals this year, every single gold, silver, and bronze medal, is actually made out of recycled metals from over 200,000 recycled cell phones. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, friends, take this time, double check your rows. Make sure you still have all your personal belongings with you, as it does get a little bit bumpy out there on the reserve, and things may have shifted around while you've been in motion. If you're going to see any more animals while you're out here in Animal Kingdom today, be sure to check out the Gorilla Falls Exploration Trail. It's about a 15 to 20 minute long self-guided walking trail. There you can see zebras, meerkats, naked mole rats, okapi, even in the underwater viewing area, or you might find some hippos nearby. If I have any wilderness explorers on board today, you guys have been riding on board the Simba 1. It's S-I-M-B-A and the number 1. Here in Harambe, though, friends, we don't like to say goodbye. It's far too formal and far too serious.